You can do it. There it is. All right, we'll call this committee meeting to order. Thank you for coming. Please excuse our committee because we're all stuffing our faces as we had to go find something to eat. So we'll be eating as people are talking, and that's personally, I got peanut butter stuck in my mouth, so I'm trying to get it washed down. We're gonna do House Bill 70 first in respect to the majority floor leader, so take it away, sir. Oh, yes, do roll call.
Representative Allred?
Here.
Representative Andrew?
Here.
Representative Berger?
Here.
Representative Brown?
Here.
Representative Clausten?
Here.
Representative Lawley?
Here.
Representative Obermueller?
Here.
Representative Provenza?
Here.
Chairman Northrup?
Here. Thank you, Diane. Majority Floor Leader Nyman, please continue, or please start your bill, whatever it is. Fire it up. Let's get it going.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to come before the House Education Committee. I served on this committee for my first 2 years in this House, and it was an honor to be able to be a part of hopefully trying to increase the quality of education in the state of Wyoming and the ability for those folks that are young and need an education to be able to have that opportunity. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity to be here to speak before you today. I bring before you today Committee House Bill number 70, HB 70. What this is this is an act relating to education, modifying the definition of home-based education programs and providing for an effective date. This is simply a repealer to start with. If you look at that statute and you read down through it, it cites Wyoming Statute 214101. Would be amended to read, for the purposes of this article, a home-based educational program means a program of educational instruction provided to a child by the child's parent or legal guardian, or by a person designated by the parent or legal guardian. What I'm going to do is, from that point on, I would strike the remaining part of that language, as you may well see on your bill. An instructional program provided to more than one family unit does not constitute a home-based educational program. Committee, here's my heart in this, and this is what I'm trying to accomplish. I currently have a daughter that is educating my 2 grandchildren. Hopefully, after we meet back up there, you're going to get to meet the other 2 little ladies that are my other 2 granddaughters that are going to be able to be here, and hopefully I'll get to recognize them before this chamber. My daughter educates my grandson and granddaughter, Shay and Jaden, and she does such an exceptional job of it. My daughter-in-law was curious about the potential of being able to have Lucille be able to go up and work with her cousins, and to be able to get an opportunity to be able to work with them and share that education. And so when we got to looking at this, and Haley was wondering about what are the implications of that, what we found is that it can only be one family union as it's defined. And so really this would limit her ability to be able to do that, which is what caused me to really look into this a little bit deeper. And upon further research and digging into it, ultimately what I would like to see have happen is for those parents that would like to be able to network and to be able to share teaching time and to be able to bring more exposure to those kids and offer those opportunities that not everybody has, the latitude to be able to do that. And in so doing, what I believe in this is that removing this language will provide an opportunity for more cooperative teaching for families that do choose to homeschool. And it will not limit those one single family unit only to be able to do that. And so thereby, some of the discussion that I've heard is that maybe we're a little too constricted in what we do with our homeschooling. It doesn't allow a broader reaching out, an ability to be able to bring more people into the educational process. And my effort in this is to try to allow those homeschool families, if they so choose, to be able to network and to be able to mine basically the wealth of information from other parents that they're working with, and to provide more opportunity for these young people to have more exposure, and thereby, I think, a better opportunity and educational chance as homeschoolers. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell, folks. I've got some other information here. Talked to the Wyoming School Boards Association, contacted their representative, I don't know, Brian Farmer. I visited with them, let them have an opportunity to look at the legislation. I got returned back from Brian. He says, we're good with it. see no problems with us. I said it shouldn't impact us whatsoever. And so, some discussion with the Wyoming Department of Education. I had a good sit-down visit with Superintendent Degenfelder, and she was good with it. She said there was some concern or question about compulsory attendance potentially, but she said that's really not in the same aspect here. She said that compulsory attendance is not being touched. She said you're still required to file all of their current, legal paperwork to operate as a homeschool, and this would not be affected in that in any way. So this is just strictly allowing folks, if they want to work together to help do a good job of educating our kids, that they would be allowed to do that in network. So I would be glad to stand for any questions.
Questions from committee? Go ahead, Representative Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In visiting with the different entities in the state, did anybody bring up the importance of, socialization of the kids? We get a few families together, these kids are going to have, not just learning from the school, right? But just learning social skills and having more exposure to other people and families.
Majority Floor Leader, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Clausen, absolutely. And I think that this will encourage more of that. I think what you're going to have the opportunities to be able to blend families, encourage cooperation and team teaching, basically. And I think it's going to bring a broader scope to these kids' opportunities. And so, yes, that was brought up, and that was also some of the encouragement I got to do this. They said, well, a lot of people are already doing this. Well, I would just like for them to be able to do it without concern that they would be doing something that would be breaking statute. So a very good question, and thank you for that.
Further question from Representative Obermuller. Go ahead.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious if you had given thought to maybe limiting this to a certain number of families, or how do you see containing this piece?
Go ahead, Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermuller, I thought a little bit about that, and then I got to thinking about, well, what happens if you have, a family of 2? How many families would that would allow you to have? Maybe 5. That'd give you 10 kids. I came from a family of 11. And so, if you wanted to put 5 families in there, you got 55 kids. So I don't know if you gather those together. So the limitation on it, I think that is going to really be controlled, because these are parents. A lot of parents are not interested in starting a homeschool or a public, or would be a private school. That would require, paying them and all these different things that would go into the private school sector of that. So as far as this is concerned, I guess I thought a little bit about that, but then I thought, I'm trying to allow as much opportunity as I can for them to interact and to bring as many people in. If they've got a really good parent that can do a great job on math or sciences and stuff like that, it's kind of self-limiting in my view, because I don't picture it turning into a full-blown school. And if it does something like that, then there are definitely responsibilities and things if they wanted to do that when they break over into a private school, which we are clearly defined in 21-4401, that explains that in great detail about what that is. And so at this point, I'm glad to talk or consider any options, but at this point, I just think my purpose and what my attempt is here is just to provide the latitude for parents, if they would so see fit, to be able to offer a broadened experience for their kids.
Go ahead, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just curious, could you describe, I'm a little bit fuzzy myself on how homeschooling works. Could you describe how it currently networks and how this bill would be different than current practice?
Go ahead, Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermuller, current practice is it has to be done strictly by the parent or someone the parent would designate, and that would be limited to that particular family, so family unit. What this would offer would be the ability for other children to be able to come in and to get some of the benefit of what different family members could have. Because let's say, for example, like in my first example, here you've got my 2 grandchildren that are being taught by my daughter, and they're excelling, they're doing a fantastic job. My daughter-in-law sees this and goes, you know what, maybe I'm not quite as comfortable with teaching some of these concepts and things like that. Is there a way that I could come in and let them work with my nieces and nephews? That's what we're trying to attempt here. It's just a broadening of that ability of parents, if they so see fit, to have that opportunity. You've got a curriculum, you've got a set, maybe not even a curriculum. You think of a BECA or a lot of the different things. You follow that curriculum that is picked by the parent, and it is laid out before the districts, and let them know over above age 7 that they can, that they're going to go ahead and homeschool their kids and things like that. they've got a responsibility in my mind that they are going to provide a curriculum which is set forth that hopefully will meet the standards. And this just allows those other folks and parents to be able to be involved in that process and bring a wider influence to those kids. So, thank you.
Go ahead, Representative Brown.
Thank you. Majority Floor Leader, thank you for bringing the bill and letting us have a little bit of a discussion here. You mentioned something to me, and I am glad that you mentioned it because it made me go look up what the definition of a private school is. And what I actually get to a concern is I'm actually looking at this and I'm thinking we could just ultimately just strike the entire home-based language in general, because I don't see how this doesn't potentially turn you into a private school. Can you explain to me if I'm misinterpreting that?
Go ahead, Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermiller, appreciate the question. Yeah, see what this change would not, in my mind, I mean, I guess you could if somebody wanted to try to twist things, which heaven forbid human beings would want to take advantage of anything. But this, if you really wanted to, you maybe could, but then you fall under a completely different set of outlines. When you look at a private education or private schooling, what you read, and if you go down through here, and this is some discussion that we had, a private schools or institution is defined by Wyoming Statute 21-2401A, are all trade, correspondence, distance education, technical, vocational businesses, or other private schools which are located within the state or have their principal place of business out of state, but are doing business. And that's the key thing, are doing business. These are folks, these are people that are doing this with the intent of generating revenue for hire. They are a business established. The trigger for licensure is location, solicitation of students. They're advertising, they're looking for students, they're accepting those. This is not what we're looking for. Nobody advertised to try to get my niece to go up there. It's just like, hey, come up there. So there is a delineation. If a private school is providing these things, they are actually a licensed business operating, drawing and advertising and trying to draw students in. So that would be, in my opinion, the delineation.
Go ahead, follow up.
Could you read me that, where you were pulling that definition from again? Please.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Majority Floor Leader, he's asking for the site that you had found that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Representative Brown, it's Wyoming Statute 21-2-401A.
Thank you.
And then you can also see 21-2404, which will give extended information in regards to private schools and the licensure and all those things that go with those.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman, as I'm looking at this, 401 and the general consensus on that is private degree granting post-secondary education institutions. I guess if I go look at private school underneath the definition of 21-4-101, which is what we're actually looking at, which is in this particular bill here, I feel like that's the more appropriate location. And we actually have private school is outlined just above what we're talking about here, Mr. Chairman. And it says any non-public elementary or secondary school, which is much more appropriate in this case, providing a basic academic educational program for children and may include parochial and church or religious schools and home-based educational programs.
Yes, also
And
nice.
so I guess what to me, I'm looking at 21-2-401. That looks like that's more towards post-secondary, and private school licensing looks like that is definitely where we're at. But am I missing where we're trying to go? Because I don't disagree with you, Majority Floor Leader. I would like the idea of somebody being able to teach their niece or their nephew without concern of breaking the law. But I also worry that if the ultimate goal here is to just call it a private school, it's called a private school.
Go ahead, Majority Floor Leader.
I love these microphones. It's an art form, literally, to get them to turn on and off. It would be if we were trying to do this for a for-profit or a business model, but this is allowing homeschooling parents to be able to simply network and help each other. So if you're wanting to license or to provide a certificate or a degree or something like that, then yes, that would be the delineation. But if homeschool families are simply wanting to be able to mine the wealth from other parents, and offer opportunity for them to be able to network, to get back and forth together without the guise of a business plan or a for-profit advertising trying to gather students or anything like that, then yes, I think if they did that, then yes, the question could come in that we're trying to be a private school, and then they would have to come under those headings. But right now, what we're looking for is the ability for parents to be able to basically network and to have them the opportunity to be able to work within the parental bounds there and to not be trying to create a business model, but offer opportunities. So, and I hope if that's clear as mud, I can dig further for you, but I think that's pretty much it. So.
Further questions? Go ahead, Representative Berger.
I guess my question, have you seen what is in other states' statutes for this? Because I know from my experience and what cousins do in Utah, they do a lot of networking with their kids. They meet at different sites to on field trips, but some days they'll meet at someone else's house or church or whatever. And I don't know how many families get together. But again, do you think we need to cap it just in case we have too many families in? But I don't know. You know what I'm saying there? But I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Berger, I guess my question is what are we ultimately trying to do? And ultimately, in my mind, we're trying to get our young people as educated as we possibly can. And it was actually brought up to me that sometimes there's concern out there that maybe, not in all cases, but maybe some homeschool children don't have the ability to be able to reach a little bit broader and have a little bit broader scope and understanding and interaction. My heart in this is ultimately to try to do the very best job we can to get our young people educated and to provide all the opportunities that they can possibly have. I think that offering a more open playing field, being able to basically mine the gold that is out there from other parents in local areas and things like that where they can network together. I guess I'm not afraid if it's working and people are learning from it and they're growing, then let's encourage it. And so I hate to limit the fact that, well, I can't help your kids or I can't help my other family members' kids because, you know, there's a statute that says I can only help my immediate family. And so this is an effort to try to break that down and let those kids have more exposure and I think a more excellent opportunity, and ultimately we all benefit from that. So.
Representative Obermuller, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on the issue of what constitutes a business model, do you think this would need some framework around definitions of what a business model looks like? I could see the potential of compensating people and not calling it a business model.
Go ahead, I'm sorry,
Mr. Chairman?
Majority Floor Leader.
Oh,
Go
it's,
ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermuller, I really don't. I think if you saw somebody that was out openly advertising, trying to get kids to come to their group and stuff like that, I think that's what you're looking at. They're actively pursuing people to come and try to maybe pay a fee to do this. This is not for a fee opportunity. I mean, these folks are not paying each other to do this at this point. Unless they're trading eggs, I don't think my daughter and daughter-in-law would be up there trying to figure out how to pay somebody that. It's just the opportunity to be able to let them come up and share that learning experience. And so I think there are just the thing that gets me in this, folks, and that kind of helps me delineate the differences is one is a for-profit trying to grow and to develop and hiring teachers and things like that. If this is them being able to move around to different locations and to try and provide those learning opportunities, to me, that's a difference than we've got a specific, advertising for and stuff like that and developing that. So I think the private school, when I think of a private school, I think of a building where you all go and you stay and you pay people and you provide just, unemployment and insurance and those things maybe, and you create basically a business. Now, this is just creating opportunity for families to network and work together in my mind. So.
Go ahead, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, as I listen to you, I totally believe in your integrity and what yours would look like. The focus of my question is just trying to flesh out what the objections will be and how to respond to that in a broader picture of all the potential population that might want to do this and how that might be framed and structured. So that's just what I'm trying to get at.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. Do you have anything, comment?
Representative O'Meara, and I appreciate that. And I don't want to try to game the system or to take advantage of anything here that's there. I guess my heart in this, Representative Obermueller, is just to allow families the latitude to be able to offer a broader educational experience for our homeschoolers. And it's kind of, I didn't bring it with me, but I appreciate Brian Farmer's reply back to me. He said, I know where you're going with this. I believe we know where you're going with this, Representative Nyman, and we appreciate your position is to provide as much educational opportunity and choice as we can. And so I think our homeschoolers, a lot of times, maybe sometimes people feel like they don't get a good enough experience. They don't get that broad enough of an education. I don't know. You tell me. I was homeschooled. You know, I was taken out of school as a freshman in high school. So I won't ask for any of your opinions on that, but how that worked out. But I just what I really want to see is I want to see us to work very diligently to provide as many opportunities as we possibly can and as much diversity as we can for our youth so that they are better equipped to handle being grown-ups, because we're dependent on our next generation. There's a lot of wealth of information out there and a lot of knowledge, and I don't want to do anything to limit that. And that's my heart in this, sir. But thank you for the question, Representative.
Representative Clausen had another question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't know if you can speak to this or maybe someone in the crowd, but we all want what's best for the kids and what opportunities there are. What are the relationships for home-based students working with the school districts to maybe get some experiences in the districts that they can't get at home?
Mr.
Go ahead,
Chairman.
Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Representative Clausen, there are multiple opportunities currently as we set right now. If you are a home-based or a private school, even, you can go to your public school and you can pay a fee and to be able to be a part of programs in sports or take other extracurricular things, maybe certain classes and things like that. So that's a good working relationship. And quite frankly, I think this will help to extend that and exacerbate that. So they do have the opportunity right now. Some folks have heartburn that they have to pay to be able to use a facility that they're paying property taxes already to use, but be that as it may, I'm not going to touch that right now. We're not worried about that, but yes, there are multiple opportunities out there for folks to be able to interact with public and to get some other added opportunities, and they are definitely available. So,
Representative Clausen, just for your information, in our district, we always encourage the home-based people to come in, and if they want to take band or they want to take chemistry or some of those classes that are just a little bit more higher up, that they were open and they could come in and do that if they wished. So we encourage them to. Further questions for the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Brown.
Majority Floor Leader, how do you handle expulsion at home? I'm just kidding.
Mr. Chairman?
No answer. Great.
Yeah, Representative, we'll chat later, but in my situation, generally it had to do with manual labor and some other things that.
That was what my take was. Yep. Anybody else have questions for Majority Floor Leader? All right. Pendergraft, I'm sorry, Representative Pendergraft, would you like to comment on the bill?
I certainly would, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to make a couple of points. Some of them reiterate what my friend here has said, and others, I think, add a little bit to that. I will begin by saying that you're about to hear from my wife. She forgot more about homeschooling and education than I'll ever know, and we've been doing it for many years. She's a published author. She's taught in private schools, including subjects like Latin. I mention this because she probably won't mention that herself, and you need to know who you're talking to. In my opinion, this bill is basically about freedom. It's about efficiency, and it's about codifying, in effect, what a lot of homeschool parents are already doing. And it just kind of makes sure that they're not held to somebody points a finger and says, you're breaking the law. This is, a lot of it is what's already going on. Secondly, under the current law, homeschool parents have a great deal of latitude in teaching their children. That blends with the third point, which is that the wisest among us know our own shortcomings, our own shortfalls. And we may know somebody who, for example, is very skilled in math, who could help things out. And it just gives a little bit more freedom and latitude to bring those people into the practice. My wife's example, for example, she teaches Latin to a number of students. It's more efficient when we can do that simultaneously. And the kids also learn more from being with each other. Same benefits in a public classroom. If you have two kids that are isolated all the time, and I'll speak to your point, Representative Clausen, in just a second. The other question, and you stole my thunder. The other question is this, if we want to put sideboards on this and try to regulate what is traded, how are you going to enforce that realistically? You know, and you stole my thunder because I'm going to use the example of a dozen eggs, which now is substantially more valuable than it used to be. But if you can even find them. And the last one, I wanted to speak to Representative Clausen's comment on socialization. As homeschool parents, we get that all the time. And I would submit to you that homeschool kids are generally a lot better socialized than public school kids. Public school kids spend the bulk of their time with children within a year or two of them. Homeschool kids are often educated with kids in a broad range of ages and around adults quite more often. And I would suggest that society includes a range from young kids all the way to adults. And because these homeschool kids are exposed to people from all ages all the time, some grandparents are in there teaching things, I would contend that maybe they're a little better socialized. With that, I will stand for any questions. Thank you.
Questions for Representative Pendergraft? Thank you, gentlemen. We'll open it up to public comment. Go ahead,
Mr. Chairman, it just makes me think it's kind of funny. You know, we always want to encourage socialization, but what do we generally get in trouble in public school for? Socializing. So that's it.
We'll open it up to
Thank you,
public
Committee.
comment. I'd like to start out with, we're going to give 15 minutes for those that are opposed and 15 minutes for those that are for this bill, because we have a rather difficult bill to work after this. So you guys can do it any way you want, but we'll start in, and if one person takes it all, you're done. So anybody opposed, please come up. We're doing opposed. Nobody opposed? Okay, so 15 minutes for those in favor. Please state your name, just for the record.
Mr. Chairman, Bob Davis. Okay, I've got some, maybe it's this, what we call practical experience over there in our little community. When, I think this networking is very important for the state of Wyoming, especially for our little rural areas, you know, what they're talking about here. When we were locked down over there with our schools, you know, and everything was going remote out to the students, you know, and everything like that. Well, my daughter has a degree in accounting. And so she was teaching all my grandchildren math, okay? And that word got out, so their friends would come by her house and get helped out with math, because modern day math is a little above my IQ apparently anymore. You know, third grade is about it. I can handle it up to there. But I seen the value of it amongst our children in our community, because there's only so much they could get out of the computer. You know, it's the real life, the real hands-on. And my daughter was willing to do that with the children over there. So from a real life and applicable experience, I think we've already seen this occur. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Bob? I'm sorry, Representative Davis. Go ahead. No, you're safe. You got off. You got off.
I will stand for question. Correctional is at the
Representative
house.
No.
We do handle all the correctional needs at the house. Grandpa's house. Thank you.
And if you just fill those chairs up, it'll go a lot quicker. So anybody want to speak, go ahead and fill them up. Oh, I forgot the part.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tate Mullen. I'm the Government Relations Director for the Wyoming Education Association. Just a couple of concerns that have already been voiced here. We're not in opposition to this bill, but we just want to make sure that we're forward thinking in some of the unintended consequences. I totally understand our rural communities and what that looks like. Even growing up in Casper, I had friends that lived clear out by Alcova and would either decide to come in and traversing those roads, or what that meant to get that student into the public education system was just really difficult. But they succeeded at homeschooling. So we want to make sure that our students have the ability to have the type of education that they and their families want. I think that one of the things that had been suggested by Representative Berger is something that we would support. If there was a cap on this, I think an open-ended does raise some concerns and some questions for us in terms of, I know there's discussion about what constitutes a private school and the necessity of a business model or a for-profit, but it would just make us feel a lot better if there was some sort of cap on this. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for Tate?
I have one.
Go ahead, Representative Brown.
Thank you. Tate, just out of curiosity, I'm sitting here looking at this and I think of the testimony from our majority floor leader. We put a cap on it on family numbers. Okay, well, you could have somebody that has 11 kids and another 11 kids, and then you've got an entire potential school in some of our smaller communities. And I looked through and I've been skimming through all of this, trying to find any other definition of private school, which I found, but it doesn't really do any difference. What is the harm if we allow it to be a private school? It's just not necessarily designated as such. It's just a home school.
Go ahead, Tate.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, great question. And really, there's no intentional harm. And I don't see this bill as like nefarious. There's no malintent with this, right? But if we look at some of our smaller school districts, we have some, in Carbon 2, LaGrange is a great example. Like, we've got some of our really small population schools. And as much as we love our rural communities, we know that what rural communities are dependent on, where we have schools, those are big job providers for those small communities. So if we open this up and it's open-ended and we have these communities with small school populations, there is a potential. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there does remain the potential that some of these smaller schools shut down because they've decided to go that route. And that would have economic repercussions for those rural communities.
Further questions? Thank you, Tate. Because I bungled and didn't ask for anybody from the government or departments, we're gonna move to them next. Please state your name and.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Wanda Maloney, and I'm the Chief Policy Officer at the Wyoming Department of Education. And I am here to speak on behalf of Superintendent Degenfelder and express her support for this bill and the freedom of parents to have this choice.
Very good. Any questions for Ms. Maloney? Go ahead, Representative Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did the department think about any of the kind of caps that were just mentioned? Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Wanda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Clauston, we did not discuss any particular caps.
Okay, further questions? Go ahead, Representative Provenza, I'm sorry.
Provenza. The prescription. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question I have, and forgive my ignorance, I guess, new to the committee, trying to see what other consequences there might be. So what's the oversight or regulation just ensuring that homeschool education is providing a good education to children versus perhaps a public school or private entity?
Go ahead, Ms. Maloney.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Provenza, one of the requirements that families are required to do at this time is to provide their curriculum to the school district. So that is reviewed by the school district, but that is how the assurance is taken care of at this point.
Further questions for Chief Maloney? All right, thank you very much. Go ahead, state your name and.
I'm Diane Pendergraft, and speaking of thunder, there's not much left for me. I'm Ken's wife, but I'm here as a former homeschool mom, former classical school teacher, and then current tutor, homeschool mentor. So I'm not teaching full-time anymore, but I've been involved in the homeschool community and just trying to offer my expertise to new parents coming in. But one of the situations I had when I first stopped working was I was tutoring and offering my services for that. And I had a family that I was spending quite a bit of time with. And just so you know, homeschooling doesn't take 8 hours a day. Because when you're one-on-one with a student, you get a lot more done in a short time. And so anyway, I had a family for several hours a day. And then I had other people asking me if they could join. And I had to say, no, I can't do that, because then I would get in trouble for appearing to have a school in my house. And this was not, there's no intent that I know of anyone starting a private school under the table. This is about homeschoolers being able to share expertise. This is about giving choice to parents who maybe want to homeschool but have to keep working because of the economy, to be able to say, my neighbor, I don't have children at home anymore, but if I did and I were homeschooling and my neighbor said, hey, could you help me out? I have to work. And I'd have to say, no, sorry, because that would be 2 families and I can't do that. So this is the intent of that, is not to try to take away from anyone else, but to offer more opportunities. The law says that a home-based educational program means a program of educational instruction provided to a child by a child's parent or legal guardian, or by a person designated by the parent or legal guardian. So a good friend of mine who's also a former homeschooler made the point that a parent could designate me to homeschool their children and they would be within the law. But then no other parent can designate me because I'm already designated. So not that I want to set up a school, but that I want opportunities for people who need them. And this is, when we talk about school choice, and there's going to be a lot of different ideas for giving school choice, this is a program, that's not a program, but this is an idea that is implementable now. Let's say that we get an ESA and everybody has money to spend on whatever school choice they want. In Sheridan, there's not a lot of choice. So we go, yay, now we have money, but we have no school. I'm sure that private schools are going to pop up, but are they going to be there next fall? So this is just kind of an immediate idea for helping people who need help, when I'm sitting here going, I could do that, but the law says I can't help 2 of you. So that's, that's my complication here. And it's similar to Representative Nyman's, just trying to help families.
We're 10 minutes out of the 15. Go ahead. Representative Berger.
Just a quick question. And then, as far as a cap on families, because in my area, there's big families as well, like the majority floor leader. How do you feel? Would you feel you need a cap, or are you okay?
I really liked what he said about I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I really liked what he said about being sort of self-capping, because seriously, I'm not going to have 20 kids in my house trying to teach, because you also lose what you started with, was the small group advantage that's gone.
Further questions for Ms. Pendergast? Thank you. Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Pleasure to be here. I am Scott Heiner, representative from House District 18, speaking in behalf of some of my constituents and my communities. Our governor often uses the phrase all of the above. Granted, he talks more about energy policy, but I think it can pertain to education as well. We need to utilize all of the above, all the different resources we have to provide a quality education for our young children, our citizens, and give them all the opportunities they can. Now, many times that may be in the form of a homeschool, a private school, charter school, a public school, whatever it may be, but we need to support them as much as we can as a legislative body so that they can be successful. In my community, we have a number of homeschoolers that try to get together once in a while and utilize the resources of the community. There are some individuals in the community that are very good at math, and they're willing to take the children maybe one day a week and teach them a concept of math. Whereas another person may be very good at music or choir. The individuals, the children can get together and learn some of these choir principles and develop their vocal talents. This is a great opportunity to embrace that, to utilize those people within the community that have skills, that are willing to share them and love to teach, and still do it in a small community environment and in kind of a pods situation with like-minded families. So I'm in support of this and stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for Representative Heiner?
Mr. Chairman, Boyd Brown, Wyoming School Boards Association. Would like to say that in at least 2 of the larger districts that I was in, our homeschool communities already had consortiums going. So I think this just operationalized what's already going on out there in the community. In all 3 school districts that I've been the superintendent in, we've allowed students to come in and take classes. They are free to them to take classes. They come in and do extracurricular, co-curricular activities. So I see this as putting into law what is already operationally happening out there. So I don't see an issue with it as long as that's kind of where it stays.
Wait, do you see a problem with capping, or do you have anything in law talk about maybe limiting it?
Mr. Chairman, at least whenever you start trying to say you're going to limit it, it kind of depends on what area they're working on. I would say if you've got somebody that wants to do some fitness stuff and PE stuff with kids, you might have up to 50 kids doing that in some of our larger communities. There's other areas where it would be smaller. I think that they're going to regulate themselves similar to what Representative Berger was talking about.
Thanks, sir. Questions for Boyd? Thank you, Representative Brown, for running mic. Appreciate that. Anybody else like to comment? We have a couple minutes left. All right. Anybody else? One more time. All right, we'll close public testimony. Okay. Please ask them in.
Miss Pavey, you are in the room, so if you want to unmute and turn on your camera.
Did it work? Can you hear me? I turned on my
Yes,
camera.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you, okay. Hi. I'm a recent homeschooling mom and I'm really excited. I guess I should say, dear committee members, I'm trying not to take up too much time. I'm supportive of this bill. I recently pulled my children from public school and I'm homeschooling. And what I've noticed in the community is we can meet up for recess and field trips, but everybody's very leery of collaborating together. So this would be giving us the opportunity to research together. And I really don't think that the money is a concern because homeschool parents don't do it for the money. And additionally, we decided not to do anything with our school district except for school sports because we have to adhere to certain things like standardized testing. So we chose to opt out. So that removes us from the opportunity to have my child take a chemistry class or other classes up there. So with this bill, it would provide us the opportunity to do a group where we put the kids together for a chemistry class or something like that. So thank you for your time.
Thank
If
you.
you have any questions.
Laura,
Yes.
we're just asking if anybody would like to question you, but
Oh,
I don't think we have anybody. So thank you for your testimony. We appreciate you.
thank you.
And that's all we have online. All right. We'll close public testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure on the bill?
Move the bill.
Let
her have it.
Moved by Lawley, seconded by Brown. Okay, any amendments, anybody? The bill's straightforward. There's no point in going through it because it's only 2 pages.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick piece of discussion.
Please discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you bringing this forward and allowing us to have the discussion. Majority Floor Leader, as I was telling it, a couple others here, is flipping through the book trying to find where this may have unintended consequences. I can't find any. I looked at potentially removing out, just striking out home-based educational services. The problem with that is we've got a whole bunch of other statutes that link up to that, so we don't want to eliminate that. I think this is a good bill. I wholeheartedly agree that we're doing the right thing for parents that choose to homeschool their children. God bless you all for taking on your children all day long with no break. So thank you for bringing the bill.
And Majority Floor Leader, I'd just like to mention that it's a great to have some more education in the Education Committee because, of course, we all got to learn about homeschool and how that works. And so thank you for bringing the subject up.
Question.
Anybody else? Comments? Question's been called. Please vote.
Hey, Representative Allred,
Aye.
Representative Andrew,
Aye.
Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Brown,
Aye.
Representative Clausten,
Aye.
Representative Lawley,
Aye.
Representative Obermuller,
Aye.
Representative Provenza,
Aye.
Chairman Northrup.
Aye.
9 ayes do pass.
Thank you very much. Passed out. We're going to move on to House Bill 32. Mr. Wilmarth. Thank you, everybody, for coming in. Mr. Wilmarth from the department, well, or not department, LSO will give us a little bit of enlightenment on all our stumbling that we did on the last time we worked this bill.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Just formally introduce myself. I haven't met most of you yet. My name is Matthew Wilmarth. I'm a senior school finance analyst at the Legislative Service Office. I did have some time at the Department of Education in 2005 to 2009, so that is a former employer. Mr. Chairman, I'm here today to provide some information and clarity on the bill the committee started to work on Wednesday, House Bill 32, Education Mill Levy Amendments. And this comes from your Joint Education Interim Committee from work it conducted this interim, primarily on a white paper I wrote for the committee that it discussed at its September meeting and carried forward to the November meeting, which sponsored this bill. The white paper on Board of Cooperative Educational Services brought about 3 policy options for this committee to address. And they are policy options, and they primarily arose out of ambiguity in your current law regarding mill levies that are contained in this draft legislation. Let me begin with, I think, the easiest amendment in the bill, and that's the amendment to the adult education mill levy that's contained on page 1 onto page 2, and then also there's a non-codified section on page 5 that discusses that as well. 2112-103 authorizes electors in a school district to levy not more than 2.5 mills for an adult education program. And the history on this was prior to the Community College Commission and community colleges being established, school districts provided adult education opportunities in their communities. So this is kind of a remnant of the education code prior to the establishment of the Community College Commission or the system in itself. There are 2 school districts that currently levy this optional mill levy within their school districts. They are Carbon County School District number 1 and Fremont County School District number 2. In 2000, the voters of Carbon County School District number 1 authorized 1.5 mill levies on this adult education program. It has not been reauthorized since that time. The ambiguity in the statute is that those voters in 2000 put on a mill levy in perpetuity. And so the policy option for this committee in this bill draft is to reauthorize or require reauthorization of that mill levy 5 general elections after the effective date of this act. The other school district, Fremont County School District Number 2, authorized their mill levy of 2.5 mills, of which they only impose 1 mill. That began in 2006, from the 2006 general election. And again, they also have not reauthorized that. In discussing with the county clerks, both in Fremont County and Carbon County, they're also unsure if this has to go out for reauthorization. So the Joint Education Committee amended 21-12-103 on page 2, lines 10 through 22, and added subsection B to require the reauthorization. Staff, LSO staff does have a technical amendment to insert a subsection C to provide clarity if the reauthorization fails, that the mill levy ends on the December 31st of that year. So that is a technical amendment if the committee chooses to work this bill and vote on it. So Mr. Chairman, on page 5, section 2, this non-codified section of the bill provides direction to the voters or to the county clerks and the voters that any current mill levy that is authorized under this section shall be submitted to the electorate at the 5th general election following the effective date of this act. And you can see that language on lines 19 and 20 and 21 on page 5. So, Mr. Chairman, that is the first concept that's contained in this bill draft, or this bill. I'm happy to address any questions related to that.
Anybody have any questions on adult education in the 2.5? Ken, go ahead. I'm sorry. Representative Clauston, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we pass this as written, will these school districts, counties, will they have to vote on this in the next general election, or will they be waiting 10 years?
Go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Clausen, good question. That is the language on page 5, lines 16 through 21. They would vote on it 5 general elections from the effective date of this act, which is July 1 of 2023. So it'd be 10 years out. Yeah. And Mr. Chairman, that was a policy choice of the committee. It could be sooner, but that is a policy choice for this committee and the body as a whole.
Mr. Omarth, I guess my question would be, it sounds then that if the whole state has, let's assume that every county in the state and every district has this going on, that all these elections will take place at the same time, and that you could actually have a BOCES or an adult education that could lose complete funding if it was within 2 counties or within 2 districts. So if they all failed. So there's not any soft landing for anybody.
Mr. Chairman, under this mill levy, there's only 2 school districts that impose it. Carbon County School District
right.
Number 1 and Fremont County School District Number 2. So those are the only school districts right now that would have to, if this were to be enacted in law, would have to go to reauthorize that 10 years from now.
I'm sorry, Carbon
County School District Number 1, that's in Rawlins, and Fremont County School District Number 2 in Du Bois. Any school district could, under the current law, propose this to their voters at any time, or whatever the requirements are under the current law.
Okay, thank you. Further questions for Matt on adult education, section 1? Go ahead. Sorry, Representative Andrews.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. If we were to amend the proposed on page 5, line 8, and perhaps elsewhere, this 2.5% to just 2%, would we accomplish someone's potential goal of cleaning this up, but not allowing anyone to, or any entity to put to vote a tax higher than they are allowed to put to a vote now?
Mr. Roman, before you answer that, I'd just like to make sure that everybody understands, we're talking about mill levies, we're not talking about percents. So there's quite one more decibel in there. You're good.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Andrew, the limit within the current law is 2.5 mills. That does not mean that the school board has to impose the full 2.5 mills if the voters choose to vote the 2.5 mills. And that's the example in Fremont County School District number 2. The voters in 2006 voted to approve up to 2.5 mills. They only impose, the school board only imposes 1 mill currently. I guess I'm not, if you want to modify, Mr. Chairman and Representative Andrew, if you want to modify this from 2.5 mills to 1 mill or 1.5 mills, that's a policy choice of the body.
Go ahead, follow up.
Mr. Chairman, I guess at least my personal goal would be to leave it alone in terms of the maximum, so that if we vote for this, no county or no area, I'm sorry, is able to then impose or at least send to a vote a greater amount of mills than they are now. Do we have to change this to accomplish that?
Go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Andrew, currently, Carbon County School District number 1 voters have approved a maximum of 1.5 mills, even though they're allowed to be up to 2.5 mills. They only put forth to the voters 1.5 mills. The school district in Fremont County School District number 2 authorized the full 2.5 mills, but they're only imposing 1 mill. I think your question is, can you require that Carbon County School District number 1 is now limited to 1.5 mills and Fremont 2 is still limited to 2.5 mills? Mr. Chairman, I don't know. That's more of a legal question that I would have to defer to the legal staff at LSO.
Okay. Would you like to clear that up? Representative Ocean, Andrews.
No. Thank you.
Go ahead, Representative Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I understood your question is, let's make sure nobody can do more than 2.5 mills in a district. Is that what you'd agree with?
Now I would like to clarify. Mr. Chairman, I guess not more or less than any number, but more than they are now, right? We are authorizing the potential to collect. I want to not be authorizing the potential to collect even more mills than anyone can now.
Clear me up if I'm wrong, Matt, because I'm not an election person, but I believe that as the law reads now, you can ask, the board can come and ask voters for up to 2.5 mills. If they ask for 1 mill, then that's what they're going to get. If they come back in 5 years and say, we'd like to have 1.5 mills, that's another election that they'll have to have at that time. And of course, you know how elections go. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman, I recognize what the committee is looking at right here. Did we, I'm sorry, I had to step out for a quick phone call. Did we go over the whole bill at this point? So I'm wondering, Mr. Chairman, if it might be really beneficial for the committee, because I sat down with Mr. Wilmarth and LSO staff for the better part of 20 minutes to understand the full context and the weight of the bill, as opposed to trying to piecemeal this together. I think it might be more beneficial for the entire committee to understand the bill in its whole context, as opposed to just individual and then trying to fix it by that individual piece.
Well, I think that some of the questions we're asking will relate to a whole bill, so.
Right.
Well, do you still want to ask your question, Representative Aldi?
I do feel he did somewhat do what you said. He didn't go line by line, but he went through and explained different sections and what was related to what. I don't know if you
This
were in.
is
the-
all
Okay,
within,
yep.
within the first section, though. We haven't been beyond that, so.
Matt, so then I do have a question that might help clarify, Mr. Chairman. It's your prerogative.
Go ahead, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, as it stands right now, the reason that this came about is because there's currently one entity that has multiple agreements that goes up and over the 2 mills that we currently have set. Is that right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Representative Brown, we have not gotten there yet. We're first focusing on the adult education mill levy.
That's all.
And this is the First Amendment on page 2, and then also related to section 2. And it's the 2 school districts in Carbon County School District number 1 and Fremont 2 are the only 2 school districts that impose these mill levies.
Mr. Chairman, I thought you guys went over the whole bill.
No,
My
we have
apologies.
not been there yet, so let's go through the whole bill then, and then
Take my
we'll
mic
continue
away.
from there.
All right, well, I do have a question when I get there.
Okay, let us continue.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, this First Amendment relates to the adult education mill levy. I will say these mill levies are interrelated to the BOCES in the fact that these mill levies are then used to support the operations of BOCES. Even though they're not levied as a BOCES, they are used to support the operations of BOCES. And that's why this whole conversation and why they're contained in the same bill. Okay, Mr. Chairman, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, is when we start discussing the BOCES mill levy. So Mr. Chairman, on page 3, lines 1 through 14, amends Wyoming Statute 2120-109. This section authorizes school boards to levy 1/2 mil for a BOCES agreement. And this is where some of the ambiguity begins. And school boards, I believe, have interpreted this to be limited into 1/2 mil. And some, I think, believe it's 1/2 mil for each agreement. In the fiscal note, table 1, if you have that with you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee, I think this helps illustrate the school board approved mill levies. And this is for tax year 2022 that we're currently in. There are a total of 36 school districts that levy a school board mill levy for a BOCES agreement. There are 19 of those 36 school districts that levy a 1/2 mil or less under this section of law. Of those 19, 17 school districts have 1 BOCES agreement. 1 school district has 2 BOCES agreements, and 1 school district has 3 BOCES agreements. Of the 36 school districts, 17 levy greater than 1/2 mil. 11 of those 17 have 2 agreements, and 6 of those have 3 agreements. 2 school districts levy 1.5 mils, and the rest are between 1/2 mil or greater than 1/2 mil up to the 1.5. The committee on page 3, the policy choice here was to provide some clarity on whether or not is the 1/2 mil limited in all agreements, or is it limited for each agreement? So the committee, in its wisdom, wanted to not impair any current agreements and capped at 1.5 mils. That's the reason why you see 1.5 mils in the bill. Again, that's a policy choice of the committee and the body. What that does, though, is if you go back to the fiscal note, there are 2 school districts that currently have more than 1 agreement that potentially could increase their mill levies to greater than 1/2 mil. So that's the that's that's why the language in the fiscal note's a little bit squishy, in that this may potentially increase mill levies, and that those boards are now given clear direction that they may increase their mill levies for each agreement up to a half mil. Doesn't mean that they will, but they have the option, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, I'd just like to point out to the committee that that's at a vote of the people.
Yes.
That's not done.
Mr. Chairman, this is the school board approved,
No.
not the voter approved.
Yep.
Board.
And
Yes.
then 10 years
Sorry.
until they have
That's
to
one.
put it up again.
Yep.
But they. So how you, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Can I, so just to, again, a clarity question. If I'm a school district and I have 3 BOCES in my school district that I'm paying for, I can do a half for each one, and that's 1.5, but we can't go over that. That's what this is clarifying, correct?
Yep. Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, correct. So in the instance, a school board would have 2 BOCES agreements. The maximum amount they could levy on the board vote would be 1 mil, 1/2 mil for each agreement. Mr. Chairman, this is a policy choice. And the policy choice again was to not impair current maximum mill levies that are being assessed by school boards.
We have a question. Go ahead, Representative Obermuller.
No.
Lawley, Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to get into that, the impairment issue and understand it better. Are those districts that currently have levied more than the more conservative view of the interpretation of what the statutes would have done as they were cobbled together? Are they using those mills, or have they just authorized the use of them?
Go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lawley, they are imposing them. I don't know how they are dispersing those mill levies. The school districts collect them, and then my understanding is then they disperse them to the BOCES and for their operations. And these agreements, and Mr. Chairman, I think Ms. Phillips emailed the committee my white paper on Wednesday afternoon. And let me point you, if you have it, I'll give you an example of both scenarios. And this is on page 12 of 14. On that left-hand side, these are the post-secondary agreements. And under CWC BOCES, there's Hot Springs County School District Number 1 Thermopolis. They levy a 0.4 mill levy for their post-secondary agreement. If you go to page 14 of 14, the back, the very last page on the back, they have a special education BOCES with Northwest BOCES, which is located in Thermopolis, and they levy a 0.5 mil for that BOCES agreement. And then at the very bottom, the Hot Springs Early Childhood BOCES, they levy an additional 0.5 mil agreement. So my understanding is they are using those mill levy revenues for all 3 purposes: their post-secondary BOCES, their special education BOCES, and their early childhood BOCES to help assist run the operations of all 3 of those BOCES. The more conservative view or interpretation is Teton County School District. Mr. Chairman, on page 13 of 14, Teton County BOCES has an agreement with Central Wyoming College. They levy 0.2 mils for that, so that's 0.2. On the back, they also are part of Region 5 BOCES. That's a special education BOCES. They levy an additional 0.2 mils. So now we're up to 0.4 mils. And Mr. Chairman, they're also part of the Hot Springs Early Childhood BOCES, which they levy 0.1 BOCES for a total of 0.5 mil. those are the two interpretations that are being, those are the examples I offer. And I think they're using those each for post-secondary, special education services, and early childhood programs. So, Mr. Chairman, I think to answer Representative Lawley's question, yes, I think they are using those for their operations of their BOCES, but they're all for different purposes.
Further questions? Go ahead, Representative Overmuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it looks like this particular piece of work that we're doing sort of limits and allows. It limits it to 1.5, but it also allows those who have been interpreting it as regarding just a single BOCES and are only using it half. It allows them to come up to 1.5, but it also caps, so it limits on the other side. So it's sort of bringing it to maybe a center point of gravity or something. Is that an accurate description?
Go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Overmuller, yes. And I think it provides clarity in the law on what the legislature is willing or giving direction on what each of those agreements, mill levies can be.
No follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So from a policy choice, we could go the other way and say, if we went the other way and said 0.5 is, we like that interpretation better. What happens in that environment with those? I think there's 2 districts that have 1.5. What happens to them in that scenario?
Go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Overmuller, I believe the next step would be when the school boards vote to impose their mill levies next year. They will be limited clearly to 1/2 mil, regardless on the number of BOCES agreements they have. And so in the instance a school board has imposed more than 1/2 mil, they will be required to lower that to 1/2 mil. That would be the inverse of what this policy choice is, as written currently in the law.
Thank you.
Pretty good? Okay. You good?
I think so.
All right, continue on, please.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the next section of law is 2120-110. This has a reference to subsection A, 2120-110A, that you don't see. School districts under 2120-110A can go to their electorate and request up to 2 mills for purposes of post-secondary mill levies for a BOCES. This section of law in subsection H references a community college board can levy a 1/2 mil on itself for purposes of a BOCES. All community colleges, except for the community college in this county, impose a mill levy for BOCES. All but one of the community colleges, and that's in Sweetwater County, Western Wyoming Community College, impose a 1/2 mil. Western imposes 0.331 mil levies. The section currently limits the combination of a school district voter-approved mill levy up to 2 mills and the community college board-approved mill levy, that the combination of those two cannot exceed 2 mills. So the 2 mil voter-approved and the 1/2 mil community college board-approved cannot exceed 2 mills. It's a little bit incongruent, but it was, that's the limitation. The issue is Western Wyoming Community College has 8 separate BOCES agreements amongst its service area and school districts. And you can see that in my issue brief in the appendix. They have a BOCES agreement with Carbon County School District number 1, a separate one with Carbon County School District number 2, a separate agreement with Lincoln County School District Number 1, a separate agreement with Sublette County School District Number 1, a separate agreement with Sublette County School District Number 9, a separate agreement with Sweetwater County School Districts Number 1 and 2, a separate agreement with Teton County School District, a separate agreement with Uinta County School Districts Number 4 and 6, and finally, a separate agreement with Uinta County School District Number 1. The final one, Uinta County School District Number 1, is where we, again, saw some ambiguity in the law, or perhaps the voter-approved mill levy has exceeded the maximum of 2 when it's combined with the College Board approved. Uinta County School District Number 1 voters have approved to levy the full 2 mills. Their agreement with Western Wyoming Community College of 0.331 board-approved mills equals 2.331 mills. So again, the Joint Education Committee, again, didn't want to impair or limit what's currently happening under those agreements, and set that the board-approved and the voter-approved cannot exceed 2.5 mills when those are combined. The question is, well, did the Community College Board assess the 0.331 mills for the Uinta County School District Number 1 agreement, or the 7 other agreements, or, so this bill does 2 things. On page 3, line 23, it clarifies that for all agreements made under 212104, which is the BOCES, that the board-approved mill levy for community colleges cannot exceed 1/2 mil. And no community college they're not interpreting this like other school districts where it's 1/2 mil for each agreement. They are all at 1/2 mil or lower. Further, on page 4, line 7 and 8, it increases the maximum of the combined voter and board approved to 2.5 mils. Alternatively, the committee could have stricken lines 3 through 7 and then mills. They just chose to just increase from 2 to 2.5 mils. It could have, the committee could have just stricken that language to say when combined, you can't exceed 2 mils. That's an alternative option that the committee could do as well. So, Mr. Chairman, that is the amendment in a long-winded explanation. I'll take any questions.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, I've got my brain wrapped around this, but one of the things that could be a policy choice as well, if I understand this all correctly, is that we currently have the one location that has 2.331. They're technically the ones that would be considered out of compliance with the law, right? So if that is the case, one could read this current law as we have it as saying, if the voters approve 2, then the community college doesn't get to levy anything additional beyond that. That's the maximum. But, and this is where I'm thinking the incongruities came from, is if the voters only approve 1.25, the board can still impose up to a full 1/2 mil, and you would only be at 1.75 or up to 2. If we don't do anything with this, that's the way I read that the law could be interpreted. The problem is that we are currently sitting at, I think the most important portion of this is line 23 on page 5 or page 3 that says for all agreements. So am I wrong in my assumptions that if we were to try to clean up the rest of this bill, that's the most important part that we actually need to look at? Because if we're sitting here thinking it's just that the board may have exceeded their authority by approving something that statute says is clearly capped at 2.
Go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to weigh in on whether a certain piece of this bill is important or not. That's your policy choice. Here's what's interesting is that this agreement between Uinta County School District Number 1 and Western Wyoming Community College, the board of Western Wyoming Community College is from Sweetwater County. Was it the intent of the law to allow voters of Uinta County to change or require the board to lower its mill levies from Sweetwater County? I mean, there are two different counties that are imposing these. And that's some of the interesting things we found in just looking at the mill levies that are being imposed. And that's the policy option is, do you want Uinta County voters to require a reduction in Sweetwater County mill levies? I don't know if that was the intent of the law or not. And again, that's why I think clarity perhaps needs to be provided in the law.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Representative Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm from Uinta 1. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but the voters have already decided for that mill. Am I correct on that?
Go ahead, Matt.
We just gone over, but that's already decided.
Mr. Chairman, the voters of Uinta County School District 1 have imposed or voted to impose those 2 mills.
The 2 mills, but what's the 0.33?
Mr. Chairman, the
Go ahead.
0.331 are imposed on Sweetwater County residents for the Community College Board.
I believe we have Dr. Caldwell here to help kind of straighten this up. So, Dr. Caldwell.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Sandy Caldwell, Executive Director of the Community College Commission. This was the part that I was referencing on Wednesday, and I hope I can clear up a little bit. And we did seek guidance from the Attorney General's office on this. We had the exact same concern, is that, oh my goodness, we don't want to create in one county an imposition on another county. What we got from that is, and this area of the state and as well as Fremont County were the two that we were using to sort of walk through what this meant. The 0.33 mill that is imposed in Sweetwater County by the College Board is under the Sweetwater County BOCES. And according to our guidance that we received, that then has no bearing. It is a moot point because it does not impact those BOCES that were voted and elected in Uinta County, for example. We did work through that. We did get the guidance that it is a moot point because the College Board cannot impose a mill in Uinta County under that BOCES agreement with Uinta County. So they do have multiple BOCES agreements. The mill levy for the College Board is imposed only affects the county in which they have BOCES agreements. So their 0.5 mill under the guidance we received would only be impacting the Sweetwater County BOCES. That limit would in fact be the case if the school districts did impose, or the electorate did impose a 2 mill option in that, then the college would be limited. But in terms of another out of district BOCES, it does not. That is the guidance we receive from the Attorney General's office.
All right. Further questions?
I have a question for Matt.
I bet you do. Go ahead. Representative Obermuller.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going to page 4, the language that we put in on line 8, we struck 2 and put in 2.5 mills. When we did that, were we fixing an internal conflict in the statute? Or were we saying that, no, we don't want to limit it to 2, we want it to be 2.5?
Go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermuller, I think what the policy choice was that you were allowing the full voter-approved mills to be imposed, as well as any community college board-approved mills to be imposed in combination at their full amounts. I think that's the intent. That when combined, Mr. Chairman, when combined, the full voter and the full college board-approved could be in total 2.5 mills.
Okay, and just one follow-up on the, when you say voter-approved, which voters are that? Is that in the community college district or is that what we're talking about here?
Mr.
Right.
Chairman, the internal reference here is subsection A, and those are school district voters.
School district voters. Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Clear as mud? Still?
Mr. Chairman, the last piece of this bill is I think the easiest to explain, and this is just a conforming change. In Title 39, 13104, this section of law lists every mill levy that is able to be imposed by school districts, counties, community colleges. The BOCES mill levies just aren't listed in those. And so this is a conforming change to the current law. So the amendments on page 5, lines 4 and 5, just insert a new paragraph 6 to indicate school districts can impose the number of mills provided in 212109A, the school board approved BOCES mill levies, and then 212110A, the voter approved BOCES mill levies. It's just a internal reference conforming change. And then the addition of paragraph 3 under subsection H under this section are the mill levies for community colleges. And that again is just referencing back to the half mill that they are allowed to impose for BOCES. Mr. Chairman, that is the bill. Happy to address any additional questions that committee members may have. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. It's still, okay. Questions? Really? Okay. Thank you, Matt. All right, we will continue this and try to take public comment. Not try to, but we will take public content.
I'm gonna strain real hard.
We're straining really hard, yeah. Would anybody like to comment? Would the community college like to have further comment? Dr. Caldwell? Oh, please go ahead, Janine.
Mr. Chairman, I encourage as you look at this, that you look at what some of these mill levies really work toward. Oh, excuse me, I'm Janine Bayteski from Teton County. Let's take, for example, the RC-BARV BOCES, where we levy 2/10 of a mill. Well, in Teton County, by the way, 2/10 of a mill generates a fair amount of cash. I would suggest to you, and I don't think if any of you know much about the BOCES, Representative Allred, I'm sure you'll agree with me, that this BOCES is grossly underfunded. Consequently, they go out to us as districts and every year we get a letter from them basically telling us what they need money for, kind of thing. And we all, as boards, individual boards, and I think there's 13 of us in that BOCES, if I'm not mistaken, all levy what we feel is our fair share to be able to keep CBARV BOCES afloat. Let's take the CWC BOCES, or the community college BOCES. That amount in Teton County has jumped up and down a little bit from 3/10 to 2/10 to 1/10, depending upon what the programming is that we have in our high school, because it really helps to fund our dual and concurrent enrollment programs. So it's not like we're just picking numbers out of the sky and levying money. And let's take our CWC BOCES, for example. That is a board of 5 of us, 3 from the school district and 2 from the college. So the process actually is we go through the budget that is necessary in order to be able to do our dual and concurrent enrollment programs in the high school, and then decide what the mill levy should be as a result of the budget. So I just caution you, and I mean, candidly, yes, we only levy a half mill this year. That's because 1/10 of a mill generates so much money. We really have always been under the assumption that we had the opportunity to levy up to a half a mill for each of those BOCES. So putting clarity in this would be very, very helpful. But like I said, I just encourage you to think about, it's not like we're, drunken sailors out spending cash. We really do have budgets behind those mill levies that we put in place. So I thank you.
Questions for Janine? Go ahead, Representative Berger.
Would you be willing to testify on the floor for us? Present this bill?
That wasn't a question.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
That's okay. Anybody else like to comment? Anybody else like to comment on the bill? Public comment. Going once, twice. All right, we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure on the bill?
Move the bill.
Second.
Oh, you're not gonna get it. Moved by Obermuller, seconded by Provenza. I have a technical correction amendment, and that was one that is this one that was proposed just says it's number C. I think you have it. If the proposition to continue the special school tax is defeated in any general election, the initial adoption of the special school tax is repealed effective December 31st of that calendar year in which it's defeated. So that would turn into C on page 2.
Mr. Chairman, move that amendment.
Moved by Brown, seconded by seconded by Berger. Any discussion? None appearing to proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion, that amendment has passed. Back on the bill. Any discussion on the bill? Is that you?
No.
Oh,
Why don't you take my mic away?
question's been called. Let's vote on the bill.
Okay, Representative Allred,
Aye.
Representative Andrew,
Aye.
Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Brown,
Aye.
Representative Clausen,
Aye.
Representative Lawley,
Aye.
Representative Obermuller,
Aye.
Representative Provenza,
Aye.
Chairman Northrup.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, do pass with amendments.
Thank you. Thank you, committee, and thank you, public, for putting up with us going through this bill. It was, as you can tell, still a strain.
Wait till we get it on the floor.